All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully everybody can hear me. We're excited to have you here today. I've got some special guests that I'm excited to have them introduce themselves here in just a moment. My name is Brett Cunningham. I'm the Senior Vice President of Digital Consulting and Product Strategy with Softvision. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about artificial intelligence, kind of the when and how of artificial intelligence. We'll give you some examples of artificial intelligence use in the market today, some of which you may be aware of and some of which we think apply to enterprise in a unique way that you may not be aware of. Really excited to have our partner Nara Logics here to talk a little bit about their platform and their technology and how to become AI first. And then we'll give you some advice on how to get started with our artificial intelligence and some unique ways to think about it that's slightly different than a typical perhaps innovation program or project. So just to give you a sense for the folks that you'll be hearing speak today, I just introduced myself. Jana, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll have Marius do the same.
Hi, Brett. Thank you very much for asking me to join. I am Jana Eggers. I'm CEO of Nara Logics. I also come from a deep background in AI, having worked in the technology for about 30 years, and happy to share today about some of the learnings that we've had over the most recent years with working with large companies deploying AI.
Hey guys, and my name is Marius. My role within the company is that of a community manager. And what I can tell you is for the past a little bit over 16 years since I've been with Softvision, and one of my interests was and is emerging disciplines. And this is the main reason why I'm involved with AI right now within our company.
Great. And just to give you guys a sense geographically, I'm here in our Austin studio. Jana is up in the Nara Logics headquarters in Boston, and Marius is in one of our Romanian-based studios in a city called Cluj.
In the heart of Transylvania. Thanks, Brett. Yeah.
Exactly. Where Dracula, where Dracula, the Dracula story comes out of, if you've heard of that. A little bit of housekeeping, just to kind of let you know, we are recording this session and we will be making it available, the recording available to the audience. You should see in your Zoom interface or dashboard a location where you can ask called Q&A, where you can ask questions in the chat window. If you have a specific question for a specific speaker or member of the panel, please specify that. And just to give you a sense, our presentation is probably about 30 minutes long or so, maybe slightly less, and then we'll spend a little bit of time in Q&A and be able to answer specific questions you have or challenges you're dealing with and engaging with or getting started with artificial intelligence. Just to give you a quick background on the companies that are represented on the panel, as mentioned, I'm the SVP of Digital Consulting and Strategy for Softvision. We're a global digital services company. About 2,500 folks really working with our clients to build digital experiences, innovative digital experiences that really change their business, whether that's consumer or end user facing interfaces or enterprise applications that really drive their business forward. We really have kind of a unique way that we think about our practice areas or guilds, and we build dedicated design, product and engineering teams dedicated to our clients. And we've really got those teams spread across the globe in our global studios. We've got our practice areas that you see there as guilds, and then our dedicated agile delivery teams are known as pods. And I think one of the strong elements that's being shown today is our partnerships, an example of which, Nara Logics, Jana and her team, really represent the innovation we can bring with our ecosystem of partners. So Jana, why don't I turn it over to you just to give a quick background on Nara and your experience around artificial intelligence.
Great. Yeah, to give kind of the parallel about us, what makes us different and unique is we focus on a emerging area of AI. So much of AI that you hear about, the image recognition, facial recognition, natural language processing, sentiment analysis, is really on the perception side. And just like our brain, we start to perceive things, but then we contextualize and decision make based on what we're seeing, hearing, feeling. And that's what we do. We really focus on multiple streams of data coming in, contextualizing all of those, pulling pieces out of that, and then how do we find the options, or what we talk about, the whiches that are available in that. So it may be which product or offer to show a customer, or which order to prioritize, or in the case of working with the intelligence community, which event could spark the next Arab Spring. So if you go to the next slide, we work with large organizations. I mentioned already, we work with government agencies. All of our customers are in the Fortune 200, so very similar to the work that Softvision does too. We have lots of overlapping in types of customers. Use cases I've already mentioned, you have personalization, anomaly detection, across industry. The big reason why people choose us is we're generally, when we go in, we're in a competitive situation, so we have to show better results. But what really pushes it over the edge is our AI. Some of you may have heard AI has a black box problem. So you can't see why the machine is deciding something. We actually have the capabilities to say why. So we have transparency in our answers. And in addition to that, most people still, and you'll hear us talking about this a little bit later, haven't gotten all their data together. So it's a constant challenge to start bringing in more data and understanding that data and seeing how that data impacts the system. We have a really easy system that helps you bring that in, helps you layer it in as you have it, helps you see when you bring in new data what happens. We're out of MIT, and as Brett mentioned, we're based in the Boston area, and actually in Cambridge in Kendall Square. So the next slide, just to give you a quick overview, because I know what I talked about was at the high level. This is a conceptual graphic on our platform. So what we're doing is coming from the right and heading to the left. That's your data coming in. It can come from lots of different sources. We're understanding that and the layers that it passes through in order to build a connected graph of all of your data. So that's the knowledge built. It's actually inspired by work that was out of the neuroscience department, the Brain and Cog Lab at MIT. But then what happens is, starting on the left-hand side, an application, in this case, this is an intelligence community application, needs to know something about the knowledge that we've built. And so it pings our, what we call a connectome, which is that graph you see. The information is brought back and then displayed. Because of the whys, they can provide feedback and say, this why isn't that important. So I won't get into nerdy details, but I wanted to give you an idea at the high level what we do, and then some at the technical level.
Great. Thanks, Jana. So I want to spend a few minutes just giving some real world examples of, artificial intelligence at work in some of our everyday lives, right? And so some of these are examples you've probably heard of or may have heard of. And then we'll actually talk about some specific enterprise use cases that we've been working on specifically, and we're seeing kind of a unique demand for within our client base. So you can kind of see these groupings a little bit. Personalization. Netflix and Amazon have been using artificial intelligence to make very targeted recommendations around entertainment, right? And smart recommendations on what you may like based on, what you've watched in the past, or the ratings, you've rated, or the responses, feedback you've given based on what you've watched in the past. Starbucks, one of the brands that's involved in many of our everyday lives, went within the period of about 12 months, went from 30 different user segments that they had segmented their customer base into, that they used to kind of market around, to really targeting, promotions almost to a one-to-one basis, right, on to their loyalty members, using artificial intelligence to capture the data, to learn from it and build out algorithms that can then, scale effectively. Siri and Alexa, we're hearing a lot around voice activations and voice interfaces from our clients with a desire to explore those more deeply and how they may apply to business, many of us use them for news, songs, the daily update, how long will it take me to get to work type questions, little timers in your kitchen perhaps. But these technologies, there's examples where Siri has kind of befriended, children with autism, helping interact and, I guess gain smarts to drive a relationship there, almost to the kind of the human element. And sometimes those technologies, one of the elements that we'll briefly touch on and can even touch on during the Q&A is, how far should they go? Many people, I don't know if you saw the announcement about Google's Assistant recently, a very interesting ability for the artificial intelligence, bot, right? To have a human-like conversation with a human on the other end that doesn't even realize that they're not talking to a human. So, kind of how far should that go? Another cool one, Amazon selling facial recognition to police, allowing them to analyze millions of faces in real time. So another great example. So I wanted now kind of, those are a few examples kind of in the real world that you may have heard of today. I want to take that and kind of get a little bit more granular and double click on, okay, great. Where is artificial intelligence playing a real beneficial role in today's kind of enterprise and business environment? So we have a few examples that I want to walk through that we've worked on at Softvision with our clients. So Marius, why don't I turn it over to you and let's talk through a few of these examples.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Thanks, Brad. So yeah, I mean, Brad's examples are, well-known, right? Well-known names, well-known companies, right? And some of them might even sound a little bit science fiction, right? And we sometimes tend to believe that artificial intelligence is this super freaking complex thing that it's somehow untouchable if you're not, I don't know, Google or Apple or whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's not necessarily like that. So basically what I'm going to do here in the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through a few of the examples that we managed to tackle with a not so large and passionate team of people. And we're going to start with this one, which is a package and shipment tracking solution. Basically, the purpose of this project is to provide additional surveillance in parcels management inside a small container to detect all present entities such as persons, parcels, and the barcodes within the parcels. So the business value here is to be able to track the parcel from the moment when it got into the smart container up until it left the container, and also to identify the persons that manipulate that parcel. Basically, you can automatically, based on that data, if you're able to extract that data, you can automatically generate reports regarding the activity inside the container and generate alert messages in case of exceptional situations. You can also work on fraud detection, and obviously you can reduce the cost for alternative expensive surveillance sensors, like for example, weight sensors on the shelf surface. Now, there are several approaches to do object detection in the computer vision domain, but the issues, because basically this is what we used, right? So we used object detection, but the issue is that many of these approaches are rule-based. For example, you get background extractions based on texture, and these rules, in some cases, are not very reliable. The main reason for this lack of robustness is the fact that the algorithms can get confused by different backgrounds, like lighting changes or occlusion of the object of interest. So the approach we took here was to base our product on deep neural networks, which if you feed them enough data, like if you feed them large enough data sets, they can address the algorithm can address the challenges of existing detection algorithms. The primary component that we used was an open source image recognition framework from Google called TensorFlow, and more specifically the TensorFlow Object Detection API. Now, basically what we used here was supervised learning, where we trained the algorithm using a data set, a pretty small data set of around 500 images, which contained around 1,500 to 2,000 objects, both packages and persons, in order to be able to train the model. And we got to pretty usable and narrow results. If we can move forward, Brett, to the next example. Now, this next one is what we had here in mind when we started working on this is, okay, how can we help both our recruitment and HR departments, and also our delivery departments, in order to provide an so-called employee recommendation system based on different attributes of the persons, like technical skills, work experience, availability, workload, location. And basically what we used natural language processing in order to go through the candidates' technical profiles or resumes and extract several features, and used unsupervised learning basically to generate categories of individuals. Now, not to be, like Brett said, not to be scared here. I mean, I believe it's pretty tough to fully replace the human intervention here. But practically what this does, I mean, a solution like this gets rid of the low level and repetitive work that people have to do. So basically allowing the folks in the departments that I've mentioned to focus on the higher level, decisions that need to be made. Thank you, Brett, for this. We can jump to the next one. And the next example is about an intelligent alerting solution. We called it SOFIA. So basically it stands for Smart Optimizer for Intelligent Alerting. Now, what we have in mind with this idea is to practically leverage machine learning in order to offer solutions that do real-time monitoring, analysis, and dispatching of certain alerts and alarms. Practically, this is targeted for a support department within a company. And this comes in order to facilitate the work of the employees from the technical support department, and practically prevents sales loss due to unresolved system outages, or system outages that are not resolved in a timely manner. This is also a platform that can provide predictive maintenance by tracking and flagging potential issues before happening. Like, to give you an example, if you identify a pattern within, let's say, a certain notification component from within your system fails, that will automatically trigger within, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 minutes other failures. So you can have the system preemptively notify you within an alert, hey, it's possible that you're going to have these failures follow up, which allows the support team to proactively work upon a potential recovery in case you reach to that point. So yeah, I think I can pass it over to you, Brett, again, and we can move forward.
Great. So those are good examples. Hopefully those kind of resonate a little bit with the audience of how, businesses across industries can leverage artificial intelligence to remove some of the manual tasks, personalize, personalized experiences, or treat a system or enable a system to be more proactive, more predictive, and more, kind of self-healing, so to speak. So, a number of years ago, probably, 5 years ago or so, kind of in our space, there was a term that came out, mobile first, right? Where traditional desktop web or digital experiences, traditional native desktop applications, in enterprises really needed to shift to mobile, right? As employee bases, as end users are on smart devices throughout their lives, everywhere they go, this whole notion of mobile first. And enterprises still are scrambling today, even some, to shift those enterprise applications to mobile first. We're kind of introducing the idea here, and I want Jana to talk through it, is, we're seeing a shift to AI first, where those digital experiences, many of them on mobile devices, are going to have the smarts and the ability to learn, behind them, that is driven by kind of artificial intelligence technology. So Jana, with that kind of setup, why don't I turn it over to you to kind of talk through that shift you're seeing in the market and some examples, of where we're seeing it.
Great. And, Brett, as you said, we're seeing more and more people say, I've got to think about AI first. And so when you all asked, let's do something together, I think we all agreed very quickly that what we want to talk about is how do enterprises actually do that? They're easy words to say, but it's hard to implement. Yeah. And so I pulled out 4 lessons that come from my experience at other companies, as well as, as I was implementing AI systems myself for our companies, and then at NAR for the last 4 years as we've developed this platform to help companies do it first. And you all know, this doesn't surprise you, AI is about the data. It's the algorithms, and I'll talk about that later, but it's really about the data. And what's interesting and what most people don't realize is this is just a chart that shows, it's from Google Trends, shows searches on mobile first, digital transformation, and AI first. And you see, well, AI first isn't growing that much. And what I'd say is the reason why that's happening is that people realize that they can't go AI first until they've done their digital transformation. And that's that line that you see growing. That's the kind of golden line in the middle there. And what's interesting to me about this graph in particular is that's actually growing faster, at a faster rate than mobile fast was growing when it started hitting its peak. So I think what's exciting to me is people are really getting that AI first isn't just about the technology that we think about the AI, but it's really about their ability to feed that technology with the data. And the second thing I'd say about this point is mere mortal companies definitely have enough data to do AI. And that's not just from me and my experience, but I was at a conference and Jeff Dean was asked this, who's the top AI guy at Google. And they said, oh yeah, it's easy for you to talk about that, Google, but do mere mortal companies have enough data? And they said, absolutely. And I think Marius gave you some great examples of places where companies have plenty of data. So please don't let that hold you back. Your issues are going to be less on the, do I have enough data side, and more on the data silos, the pedigree of that data, because you haven't been using it. Once you start using it, it actually quickly cleans up. That's what I mean about the staleness. So, 2 big points here. Think about your data. Is it digitized and accessible? Think about where it is and how to get at it and how to just start using it. So that's lesson number 1. It is all about data, but some different nuances than you normally think. I'm going to give you an example on the next slide. So one of our customers who's public about working with us is Procter & Gamble. We work with them in various places, and one of them is on the Olay Skin Advisor. So you go to olay.com. It's really fantastic. There's Skin Advisor is right there. Takes a picture of your face, analyzes for your skin age, tells you where you're doing really well. I'm doing really well on my forehead there. My mouth, it doesn't like my smile lines. So it's fun to go through, answer a few questions, and it gives you a product regimen recommendation. It's been terrific and fantastic. We're all very proud of the commercial results we've gotten, but what's really exciting for a company is it really helped them get their data together. So on that left-hand side, the data on all of those products, they didn't have a reason before for having it all together. They didn't have a reason for having the ingredient information married with the claims information because we were never using it before. And so what we were able to do in working with them and giving them that reason, the Skin Advisor, is help them pull all that data together. Again, like I said, our platform helps people pull the data together quickly see how did those products match up. So we could see these products match each other, and that's what, and you know, these products don't. So out of those 127 products that they have, there's actually 2 million individual regimens. One of the things I'm most proud of is that 90% of people that come in, actually it says daily there, but it's weekly, actually get an individual answer to their skin needs. So the idea that we're able to give, you know, and Brett, I think you brought up the Starbucks example. We're not just grouping people into 30 different regimens that people have time to build, that their scientists have time to build. We're actually allowing the machine to put together the 2 million different possibilities and really deliver that very seamlessly to the customer. And that's exciting to really take data that they had already, marry it, and allow that to actually serve their customer better. And rather than just grouping people into 30 groups, you're now allowing people to be individual each week. So the next lesson that I would have is, this is the other thing you're told, you know, gosh, not only do you need tons of data, but you need these experts. And this happens to be an amazing group out of the University of Cambridge, the other side of the pond. And they're sitting on the chessboard that actually talks through the Deep Blue, and Deep Blue from IBM beat Kasparov at chess. That's the chessboard, a life-size chessboard of that. And these are all PhDs in AI. And so when I say bringing in expertise, mostly people think, oh my gosh, I've got to go hire PhDs. And how am I going to compete with Google and Amazon and Microsoft for getting those people? The good news is, I have something exciting to tell you, which is on the next slide, which is that mere mortal engineers can understand AI. So I call this the chicken and egg problem. So your algorithms are your chicken and your eggs are your data. So you need people that understand both. And it's really unlikely that you're going to get a PhD researcher that really understands your data. So what you want is engineers that are working hand to hand with your data people that can understand it and then try different algorithms. Marius talked about this. He talked about the different algorithms that they use for their different projects, and that's fine. And don't get stuck, you know, just because you have an expert in one algorithm doesn't mean they can solve every AI problem. It takes different algorithms, and more what you need is an engineer that will go in and flexibly try these, that will constantly go back and forth of, do I have, you know, but did this chicken come from this egg, or did this chicken come from that egg, you know, and constantly iterate between those two, because you really can't tell which one came first. So your team knows your data, that's the exciting thing, and mere mortal engineers can understand it. You can work with great people like Softvision. You can enhance your team that way, or bring in your team. The example I'm going to give to you here is, we work with the intelligence community, as I mentioned, and what they wanted to know is they wanted to see streams of documents, information coming in. It can be anything from a newspaper article to Twitter to a confidential informant. They have tens of thousands of documents actually coming in every single day. In those documents, there's typically more than one event. Then across those documents, you have to resolve the events. So you have a lot of expertise coming in there. You may have one group that's really great at picking out the actors. You may have other people that are really great at figuring out the location, geo for something. And so what you want to do is have people, you know, again, different engineers, using different chickens or different algorithms that are really providing expertise in a particular area. You don't have generalists that can go in and go across. You have great engineers that will really figure out one particular area. And then you merge all of those sources so that you can figure out, okay, which events are priority based on which context. And that's what our system helps people do. So again, don't think about hiring PhDs. Really think about hiring great engineers that can bring your systems together, that can figure out which algorithm fits which data. So if you want to go to the next slide. So the third lesson that I'd say, again, from experience is, you know, when you have chicken and egg, what do you start thinking about as breakfast? And so I would go to my bacon, which is my results. So those are the three things. And by the way, if you search Google chicken, egg, bacon, AI, I have an article written on this if you want to read more detail on it on O'Reilly. So the bigger point here is don't focus about the magic and flash of AI. This is actually a qualifier for customers that come to us. If they come in and tell us, well, our board wants us to do AI, you know, they're deprioritized from our perspective. When they come in and they say, look, this is the metric we're trying to improve. Can AI help us with that? That's when we start engaging with them. So if they're really about, I just want to check a box, I just want to see the magic of AI happen, that's not a good fit for going into production, and we're interested in going into production. So that's why I'd say really focus on your results. And if we go to the next slide. The example here that I would give, and the reason why I wanted to give this example is because the answers change and what your results change. Because like I said, if you don't have the data to match one problem, it may actually match another. And what happened here was not that they didn't have the data to match this problem, which I'll explain, but that we found a higher priority problem that we could solve faster, that could go into production sooner, and be ready to change that. You know, what's my objective here? Learn something from the data and move. So this is a Fortune 50 medical products wholesaler. What they came to us said is they do third-party pay for insurance companies. So somebody can order a product, it needs to be approved by their insurance company before it's shipped. They wanted to know, when could we ship faster? And what we found is actually two problems. One is the ones that take the longest to get approved, that takes more waiting time from the customer and more work from them, actually are the ones that won't ship in the end. So we ended up building a system to help them figure out which ones won't ship. A lot like Marius was talking about in tracking orders, you can do the same thing as, is this order going to be approved? Well, what we found is what's on the left, and I can't give you because it's all proprietary information, but that I can't give you exactly what each row and column means, but that first dark square on the left is actually when they would have a new customer. And so what that told us, and this was all came from a report that we made on orders that won't ship, we can actually tell them, remember when I said we had the whys, we said, you know what, the only place that you have a lot of heat there, that dark place, is with a new customer. And so we can go in and figure out, and the reason that happened, that as again, we unpeeled the onion, is because new customers weren't getting policies set up right. So now what we did is have a project where new customers are matched with the right policy for them. I know it sounds crazy, people don't know their policy, but it's much more complex than that. So that's the big lesson that I would tell you is really do focus on results, and Softvision is going to show you a great process in just a couple of slides. But make sure you're ready to iterate on all of this. Take learnings that you have from one objective, and don't be afraid to say, you know what, this one's bigger and it's not as high a priority. We can switch and solve this other problem. So AI is really much more different, going from that deterministic, you know, we're going to plug through this until we get this answer. You learn from the data that hasn't been used before, and you start iterating a bit more, and don't leave opportunities like that to the side. If you can solve them quickly with the same data, go in and do that, and that's going to improve the results, and it's actually going to change which orders won't ship in the future. So that's why you want to go ahead and be more flexible when you're working with AI, because you have a great learning tool with your data.
Great.
So the summary on these three, and then I'm going to hit the last one because it fits. We decided to separate it a little bit because it goes so perfectly into what Softvision is going to talk to you about. I've already talked about your number one challenge is going to be data issues, not data size. So really think about that when you're going in. Make sure you don't just transfer all the data or get the data in one place. Really make sure you have people to understand it. Make sure that you understand the expertise. It's really about software development. And again, this is Softvision's super skill. So I'm going to let them talk about that. But marry them with the people in your organization that know the data, and then be ready to work with them closely and work with folks like us who are vendors on redefining your goals, making sure that you're listening to what you're finding and taking action. Then I'm going to tell you my last big learning, which was from an HBR article. So Harvard Business Review, and this was like a year and a half ago, they said, they were talking about Unilever and how they built their insights engine. And I said, oh, this is great. They're going to talk about the technology. And I got the article and I read it, and it was all about the org. And I realized, guys, it is about the org. The engine of AI is your organization. So the next slide is something that I came up in response to that to help explain to people. So if you want to deliver wow to your customers, which is up at the top, you've got to have an org that's actually curating and supporting your data. That data feeds into AI, which feeds into technology. You've heard software is eating the world. Well, AI feeds software, your data feeds AI, and the organization is really what cultivates that data. So really make sure, again, this process that Softvision is going to go through with you is actually what's going to help drive the success of your projects. And with that, I turn it over to you guys.
Great. Thanks, Jana. I like the idea of the data whisperers kind of recommendation or advice you give to customers there that are trying to get started. So the last thing I want to do over the next few minutes is really kind of focus on how do you do just that? How do you get started? Jana gave us some great advice on things to think about within your organization, priorities in terms of skill sets a little bit. You know, this is an example, and many of you have seen different versions of this when we approach a traditional digital product of the flow or the process that we go through, from gaining empathy and understanding the customer or the end user to building prototypes, and going through usability and user validation testing, all the way through the actual, design, development and launch, the running and ultimate optimization and evolving of a digital product. That still applies here, but when you think about, there's some elements that I think that are artificial, that are specific to getting started with artificial intelligence. So I kind of use this, if you know Michael Scott from The Office, he had this quote, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." And so oftentimes you hear over and over when, in panelists, at events, and in articles, when people are talking about how to get started with innovation, you hear the typical steps. The experts will tell you, just get started, right? Take the shot, as Michael Scott kind of says here. Start small, build prototypes, fail fast, and then invest where you get traction. Leverage partners. I think all of those apply here, but in getting started with artificial intelligence, it's a little bit unique. And so what I want to do is Marius, why don't you spend a few minutes kind of talking through our advice that we put together over working with clients and learned, right, on how to actually get started so that the audience can kind of take this and start to learn from it and think about how they implement in their environment.
Sure. Thanks, Brett. Basically, the way we see things, and I would start with underlying what Jana said a few minutes ago, with the thing which I totally agree upon, regarding you need smart engineers. So that's the main ingredient. Not necessarily go for the highest and most well-known data scientist out there before you involve some smart engineers and you involve your organization. And this is how we start here, right? So basically, this is what the steps 1 and 2 from the iterative process that we see are all about. Gathering the data, what do you need to interpret, and gather the knowledge. And by gathering the knowledge, that is first and foremost talk about and the problem that you are trying to solve. Try to identify the problem that you're trying to solve as best as possible. And these two ingredients are important for the third step, which is practically designing a solution. Now, designing a solution within machine learning means let's figure out which algorithm would work best on the particular problem that we're trying to solve, and applied on the particular data that we have at hand. Now, you take a decision, right? And you prototype a model, right? Upon which what that means is you identify a sample of the data which is as representative across the board for all the cases that you can imagine as possible, and you train your model. Based on that, you run your actual data through the trained model, and you draw conclusions. You see if your model applies. Most likely it won't apply for the first cycles, right? But you would be able to draw valuable conclusions like, okay, maybe there's an attribute that I shouldn't be looking at. Maybe I'm missing certain attributes from the data that I'm analyzing. And this way you circle back. You go back to the drawing board, you can adjust your algorithms, you can adjust the way you look at the data, you can adjust the model that you prototype, and you move forward. So that would be it in a nutshell.
Right. So it really becomes a bit of a cycle where you can continue to improve the accuracy, right, and the relevance of the data and the algorithms that are running based on it.
Right.
Great. Well, listen, what I'd love to do now, I appreciate your time. That kind of concludes the core presentation itself. Hopefully this is valuable in terms of giving you a little bit of better understanding of how you take this kind of, big idea, the flash of artificial intelligence, and apply it to, making bacon in Jana's example, which is the real results that can apply to your business or solve a business problem, like some of the examples we gave. What I'm going to do now is I'll open it up to Q&A. I've got a couple questions in here, that are being asked. And so I'll just kind of go in order. We'll spend a few minutes doing that. Please, if you're in the audience, feel free to add to these questions in the Q&A section within your Zoom dashboard there. And we'll go through and answer them. So the first question, Jana, I might address this to you. With GDPR and all the security risks coming to the forefront of technology and data, what is the responsibility of companies to disclose information when it comes to AI?
Yeah, I think I actually love this question. There's a lot of people that don't like it because they make it makes them uncomfortable. And GDPR is about the data. It's not necessarily about disclosing the algorithm, that it's an algorithm talking to you. That was the Google Duo announcement that kind of sparked, I think the reason why that sparked so much concern is that they were doing things like I just said, they were putting in ums and pauses to make it seem like it was a human when it wasn't. And people felt like that was, fooling people, and they were uncomfortable with that. And I think these are good discussions to have. I don't think it's wrong for companies to launch things, and we all learn, and they got feedback, and I think they responded well. I hope they actually respond and change things quickly, but I do think they were surprised by it, and that's okay. But when you talk about GDPR, in particular, data protection side, I think it's only going to force companies to be healthier with their data management. I mean, you heard me. I talked about the importance of really understanding your data, not having stale data, knowing where it lives. I mean, part of the problem before with GDPR is people had data siloed all over the place. And so I think this is going to drive healthier practices, and people that pay attention to how they can use data as an enabler rather than letting GDPR block them. How do they allow them to actually enable these regulations to enable them to think through this in the right way? I actually believe that if you take it not as something that's going to gate you and take it as a good practice approach, you're actually going to be in a better position. Now, full transparency, I'm talking from a very lucky position that because we are transparent AI, I can pull the thread of any data out. So that's where a lot of people are concerned, is that they're not ready for their model management because they're going to have to retrain models in order to take people out of them. And they don't have that part down. I can easily. So again, I'm coming, for me, it's more about, it's going to help people get data together better. For some people, I do understand the concern about how do they manage all these models if, one day 5 people come in and another day 6 people come in, and, the next day 1, you're rebuilding the model every single time. And that model management, we just haven't figured out. I think we can as an industry, but we really haven't figured out how to handle. So
great.
Hope that helps.
Yeah, the next one maybe I'll have both of you kind of talk through a little bit. The next question is, how do you run a pilot program and train your team to actually get started with AI? So if you're going to kind of double click on putting a workflow in place, maybe what's an example, or how do you really do that effectively? Marius, why don't you start with this? I'm actually going to I'll jump to a slide we had in backup that may help you kind of facilitate this conversation just a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So this example is applied on supervised learning. So there are 2 types of it. There is unsupervised learning and supervised learning. Now, in the supervised learning case, basically what you do in the data analysis and model design steps is you have historical data, right? Now you split this into 2 sections. You split this into 2 sets of data. You split this into the training set, which you use to train your model, and you split, and the rest of it is going to be the test set. So basically what you do is you extract some features from your data, either if it's the test set or the training set. Those features are the attributes, right, of each instance of the data. And based on those attributes, and what are you looking for in those attributes, you basically create your model, and you train your model to take certain decisions based on those attributes values. And what you do afterwards, you take the test set and you test the predictions that you've made on your model based on the training set. And practically what you do, you evaluate the accuracy of your predictions. Now that's the data analysis and model design, and afterwards you test it, right? You test it with new data, with production data, and on which you apply the same feature extraction that you did on the historical data, and you run it through your train model, and you get your predictions. So that would be, in a nutshell, basically what happens. Practically, the learning process takes the examples, each one of them, and updates its internal state so that the predictions and the future predictions can get closer and closer, as close as possible to the desired output.
Great. Jan, anything else you'd add to that?
Yeah, there's three things. I think that was great from the technical side for people to understand. There's three things that I would say that come up a lot with us. And the first one is, how big of a project do I do? AI, as we talked about, there is large data available, and I usually say big enough, which is not a satisfactory answer to most people. But what I mean by that is you really need to think about, how do I go to something that's big enough that it's not deterministic anymore? So that's what you want to do. You want to get some of that probabilistic side, because that's where AI really excels. If we're really going to just have things that follow rules, then we might as well just build those into the system. Mm-hmm. So I'd say big enough to be non-deterministic. And then I'd say, big enough to be realistic to your team. So you need to make sure that, hey, if we get a pilot like this, are we going to believe this? Will we move forward with it? So I'd say, again, I can't answer that for, blanket for every organization, but these are conversations that once we structure them with clients, they actually go pretty well and they get it. And I think we come up with good sized projects for them. The second thing is, and you're not going to be surprised from the discussion, but really it's getting the right people in the org involved. So making sure that the data scientists aren't just producing models, making sure that the engineers are really thinking about what systems are going to be built, how people are going to interact with it, make sure that the business people are involved because they support and they're evaluating where you are. I have to say, we've many times seen people come in and say, well, we just want to run against this test set and we have a gold set. And I'm like, does that gold set even represent reality? And if not, and then they'll say, no, but it's what we run everything against in our company. And I say, well, how much have you released to production? And they'll say, oh, we haven't released anything in production in the last 18 months from our new AI project. So I'd really say, make sure that you're getting the right people in the room to make sure your project you're going to have something that really can be implemented. And that brings you to the third point, which is don't forget about the implementation. So most of the time, AI is integrating into systems, and systems mean that there's, an inflow and an outflow. And have you thought about how this is going into production? So that's a part of all of our projects, is an integration framework, diagram, report. It depends on who the company is, that we do with the proof of concept. It's not just about the results of the proof of concept, but it's also a study on how are we going to actually put this into production and what are the systems changes we need for that.
Great. So the next question that we probably got time for one, maybe two more. I see here. So I think it's Ruby or Python. Which is the best for people who are just getting started with predictive models? I'll pass that to you, Marius, as our resident engineer on this panel.
But basically, we would say Python. Python is a bit easy because it has a lot of support within the machine learning world, and it makes it incredibly easy to manipulate data and prototype a model. And it has a lot of already existing libraries that you can use. It has a great integration with TensorFlow, for example, if you want to go into the image recognition domain. So yeah, out of those two, I would go with Python. Great,
good. I think I think that really wraps up the time that we have. We really appreciate the attendees for attending. As I said at the beginning, we'll follow up with, a recording on this. Frankly, both Softvision and Nara, the companies represented here today, hopefully this was valuable for you. We'd love to talk further. Hopefully this gives you some confidence how to make bacon, right? And to take, the capability of artificial intelligence and apply it to your business in a practical way. that's not all flash, right? That maybe you hear about in the media with artificial intelligence, but solves a real business problem in a smart way. So we'd love to chat further with you about challenges you have or ideas you have to implement artificial intelligence and the approach we take to be successful. Thanks so much for attending today, and have a great rest of your day. We'll follow up soon.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Jana. Thanks, Marius.
Thanks, Brett. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.